Hey guys, what's up? My name is Calvin, and this is the first video of a complete retouching workflow with the Beautyretouch CC panel. So in this first video, it's all about the RAW conversion. And in the next videos, I will show you the next steps. So make sure you check out the playlist where you can find in the next time all the videos about the complete retouching workflow with the Beautyretouch CC panel on this image. In case if you don't have the Beautyretouch CC panel, or if you don't want to buy it, no problem. I'm sure you will find a lot of interesting things in these tutorials to learn some new techniques. But you have to understand it's all about the Beautyretouching CC panel, so mainly for all the people who have the panel, who like to work with the panel. So I will show you in this videos how I use the Beautyretouch CC panel. Okay, and then in this first video, it's all about the RAW workflow, so the RAW conversion. I always start here by clicking in the workflow options. And I work with the sRGB color space and in 8-bit. I know that many trainers or other photographers, retouchers recommend 16-bit and Adobe RGB, but it depends. Most of the time I work in sRGB because this color space is easy to understand for everybody, especially for the beginners. And in 8-bit, I don't have the double of the size of the file size in case when I work with 16-bit. And these are the reasons why I use sRGB and 8-bit. In one sentence, it's enough for me. I'm happy with it. But if you have a good knowledge about color space, color management, of course, you can work in Adobe RGB, because then you know what you have to do later when you publish the pictures in the internet or in the web. All right, what I do is I make sure that I click this little icon here, open in Photoshop as a smart object, because when I do this, I click OK, and then this button here turns from open image into open object, and now I can open this picture as a smart object in Photoshop. So what is the big difference? The big difference is I can go back and forth by clicking on the little icon. Let me make that a little bit bigger. When I double click on that icon here, I can switch back and forth between Camera Raw and Photoshop, and this is a big advantage. All right, so the first button here in the Beautyretouch CC panel is the RAW duplicate. So what I do all the time, I click on that button, and now you can see this is the original file, and right here on this new layer, I can do my RAW conversion. And when I do some changes here on this layer, the changes will not affect on the original layer. So after the RAW conversion, I can turn it on and off to see the before after, what I did in RAW conversion, how far I go away from the original out of camera file. So this is the first step, what I do all the time in the RAW conversion. I make it's not a duplicate, it's a new smart object via copy. And this is the first button, what the Beautyretouch CC panel does. Okay, so I double click here, and now I do my RAW conversion. So the first step, what I do all the time in the RAW conversion is I sharpen the image. I know, same here. Many instructors recommend do not sharpen beauty image. I do it. I like to have more details in the skin texture. Well, I do not over sharpen the image. That is very important for me. I just add a little bit basic sharpness. So I go here to the details section, I bring the radius down to 0.6, and then it depends a little bit, most of the time something around 60 of the amount. So now what I have is a basic sharpness. If you like to click before after, just the sharpness, here's a little trick. I mean, I love it to do it in this way. When you bring the cursor on the button here, when you double click, it gets back to 25, hold it there, the arrow, and then click again, one click. Double click, one click. Double click, one click. And now you can switch here before, after. Of course, you can do it with these buttons, but later when you did a lot of changes and you just like to see the before, after of one slider, try to use the double click and one click. It's a simple trick to see the before, after. Okay, so in the next step is the brightness, the exposure. Well, this is a beauty image. So in beauty, what is very important is the eyes, makeup, skin, hair. These parts are the most important parts. So in this case, the skin, we can see, I guess, 50% of the image is skin. And so I like to see a little bit more skin. So I bring the exposure a little bit down. Of course, you can do the same with the highlights a little bit, but most of the time I bring the exposure a little bit down. So the brightest part of the skin now is great. When I lose sometimes a little bit more the details in the shadows, I can bring the shadows here a little bit up. So I like to make sure that I have everywhere details. Maybe the image gets a little bit flat, but that's not a big problem because later in retouching, I can paint in some highlights, shadows, I can do some dodging and burning. So easy. The next point is, or the next change is the color of the image. I know that many people are using the temperature slider, but the problem with the temperature slider is when you change the temperature in this picture, everything gets warm. So the highlights, especially the highlights, and that means sometimes the image gets a little bit brighter by changing here the slider to the right. And you can see sometimes you have some blown out highlights. And well, I'm not a big fan of the temperature slider for a skin tone. The slider is great when you have to do some color adjustments, when you have to remove a color cast. In this case, this slider is great. But when I like to change a little bit the skin tone, I prefer the split toning. And right here, you have the shadow slider. And here's a short quick tip. When you press the Alt key and click on the hue here, you can see the strongest amount, the strongest color cast. And right here, you can choose your color, what you like to have. Maybe a little bit more this brown tone. And then you can add the saturation. Well, before I figured out this tip, what I did was bring up the saturation, change the hue, and then bring it back. So too many steps, press the Alt key, find your color, and then you can add a little bit more saturation here. In this case, I like to add a little bit a warm tone, because, yeah, she has brown eyes, brown hair, so I don't like to desaturate this image. All right, maybe we can add a little bit more contrast, and of course you can do it in your way. This is just the way how I work with this image. And here's another good category of color corrections right here. In this HSL grayscale mode, you can change many colors, and you have here an orange slider, what you don't have in Photoshop. Well, you can do it in Photoshop, but not so intuitive or so fast. Here, with the orange slider, you can change the skin tone. You can desaturate the skin tone. And you can see without masks, you have here your own red slider, so the lips are separate. And this is very great when you like to desaturate a skin tone, or maybe you like to brighten up a skin tone. Cool sliders. I don't need it here, but it was a point. I like to show you that slider. Maybe you can use it in the future. Maybe I add a little bit more red, a little bit yellow. I like to have this skin tone. Well, these are only the basic changes. I am able to change everything later in Photoshop. So I don't like to do much here in the raw conversion, just the necessary things like exposure, skin tone, and sharpness. That are the basic steps, what I do here. And all the other steps like skin retouching, color adjustments, a look, or what else, I try to do that in Photoshop, and every technique should be on its own layer. So you can see not big changes, but maybe you saw a few tips or techniques what you didn't know. The next step, what I do here, maybe it's typical German. Everything have to be in order. So what I do is I work with groups. So I click here and I choose a new group from layers. I call that raw. And the raw are the most important part. Don't forget it. In this case, I choose the color red. And this was the first step. This was the raw conversion. If you have any comments, any tips, I mean, this is my way, but that means not this is the best way. This is just the way how I retouch it. But you can write in the comments if you have any questions. And in the next tutorial, we go into the next step. This is the rough retouching. We call it rough retouching. And you will see the steps then in the next video. So I hope you enjoyed it. After a while ago, another English tutorial. And thank you guys for watching, and see you in the next tutorial.